What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journos, Comics, and Pop Culture. Today's video, we're doing a deep dive into those individuals that think that what I've been doing as of late with these videos discussing how selling comics as bulk is worthless. I have a lot of people saying, Chris, Journo, you're mad, you're ruining comic books, what you're doing is wrong. We have a comment that I think is really going to spark up this conversation to help allow all of you watching to understand why what I am doing is not only not wrong, but it is essential to the future health of comic book collecting. If you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. We're just going to go right into this. Here's a video that I did about 5-6 months ago. 99% of comic books are worthless, and here's yet another example. Now, a lot of you that have been watching, you guys know that I've done a lot of videos over the last year where I'm looking at comic book collections that people are selling off online, and then I break them down. I look at what's in the collection, how much they're asking, and why I think either it's good or not so good. The majority of them have been not so good. You get a lot of people trying to bulk off their collections, asking thousands and thousands of dollars for these collections when, what do I say in all the videos? Nobody's ever going to buy them. And I talked about in this video specifically, as well as one other that I did right before this, about why there's this misconception and this fallacy that just because it's a comic book, it's going to be worth money, or just because you paid $3.99 cover price, $4.99 cover price, that you're even going to get that cover price reimbursed to you if you ever want to sell it. And I keep telling you guys, it's not how it works. Comic books as a whole are just like any other commodity. Once you buy it off the shelf, it depreciates. There is a collectability to comic books, but these are days of old. The collectability of modern comics, when I say modern, we all know we're going back 30 plus years. The modern age starts in 1992, if we want to talk about age, even though some people might consider, well, if it's 20 years old, it's vintage. Okay, that's fine, but that's not what I'm talking about here. We can even go back into the 80s. We can even go back into the 70s, into the Bronze Age, and talk about how once you look at comic books, especially in bulk, the market changes. But before I go on a tantrum about that, let's look at the comment that this individual left, and let's read it together because it really sparks the dialogue, folks. All right, here we go. We got a comment right here from Erratic Static 70. Big shout out to Erratic Static 70. Let's just go ahead and read it, folks. Why do you keep saying that 99% of comics are worthless? You still collect them yourself. I'm confused. Why do you hate so hard on other collectors? I get it. Some comics aren't worth a whole lot, and some people do not know the value of what they've got. But what you are saying is bad for the hobby. I think you may be toxic to the community. I get it. You're mad. You're mad, not you're mad. It's not, I'm not possessively holding mad. It's you are mad. I get it, you're mad. But no need to say 99% of comics are worthless. Do you not understand how horrible that sounds? Especially coming from a comic influencer like yourself, you may be discouraging new comic collectors from collecting. Okay, I do believe that this individual right here could possibly well be coming from a place of good intent. But what is that saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now, I also believe, like a large majority of collectors out there, this individual is coming from a place of cognitive bias because he, as a collector, has a vested interest in the value of his comic books and of his comic book collections. So if you get a YouTuber, like he says, a comic influencer, making videos consistently now at this point over the last year saying that 99% of comics are worthless, how dare he? Because what does that trigger in the comic book collector? Well, it triggers the comic book collector to sit and say, is there any truth to this? Now, the response might not necessarily be coming from a place of wanting to know if there's truth or if it's fictional or if I'm just mad or angry. Because before that individual, this individual right here, or any other individual getting upset at me, before they even can start thinking with logic and start examining what I am saying and start breaking it down from a place of research and critical thinking, they immediately go into the emotion mind and react. And what is their reaction? It's a defense mechanism. How dare you say that all this money that I've been putting in my comic book collection, how long have I been collecting? 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40 years. How dare you say that everything that I've done leads to everything that I own being worthless? How dare you say that? I'm triggered. So who's really mad? Is it me or is it you protecting your own vested interest? Now, I could sit here and break down every sentence and question that this individual asks. But let me go ahead and simply read what I wrote in response. I said this, and I wasn't being passive aggressive or cynical. I meant this when I said, I love this comment so much because your naivety speaks volumes and proves why I do what I do. It's truth. First off, I'm not mad about anything. So what did I cover first? He says, I think you may be toxic for the hobby. I get it. You're mad. Now, no, I'm not. I'm not mad about anything. Now, going back here, what I'm saying is 100% fact. Why is speaking facts? So now I got a question for him and for you guys. Why is speaking facts bad for the hobby? This is the problem in comic collecting. You would rather have cognitive dissonance or a cognitive bias instead of face the truth. I keep saying 99% of comics are monetarily worthless because they are. It's a statistical fact. Now, okay, look, guys, you want to argue with me? Is it 99%? Is it 98%? Maybe it's 96.7%. The 99 is the sum of all parts, right? It's really looking at, because I don't think we as collectors really understand. Since comic books, and of course, I'm not talking about Golden Age comics, but they're in a league of their own, right? But even there's a lot of Golden Age comics that are monetarily worthless. A lot of the Dell stuff, even a lot of the Disney stuff and Porky Pig stuff, it's like, you could still find that. Of course, a lot of it is beat up. If you find a high grade of any of that, of course, there's going to be a value that somebody's going to be willing to pay. A lot of that still sells for $1 or $2 a piece. That is inherently monetarily worthless, especially in bulk. But let me get back to this. I don't want to stray so high, but I don't think we understand how many comic books from the Silver Age up to today have been published. And when you look at A-list characters or A-list titles and everything else that's been going on, and if you look at the amount of comic books that have been produced since like the mass production of comic books in the late 80s until now, you can actually argue, man, is it 99% that really hold no monetary value, especially in bulk? But let me continue on. Saying this, that 99% of comic books are worthless monetarily, saying this is in no way bad for the hobby. So now I'm addressing the stuff that he said about, I feel you may be discouraging new comic collectors and I feel you may be toxic to the hobby and that what you're saying is bad for the hobby. I'm addressing these things. It's not bad for the hobby, nor should it turn turn away collectors. It should actually bring collectors in, and it should educate collectors to be smart buyers. Now, the why and how of what I just said. Why is what I'm saying good for collectors? Why should it educate collectors to be smart buyers? And how would what I'm saying actually bring in new collectors? And I'm just going to say it right here. The bulk of new collectors shouldn't be coming into the comic book hobby thinking that their comic books that they're paying are going to retain some type of value or return on investment. That's not how you get kids into the hobby. That's not how you get the majority of people into the hobby. We want to read comic books. But I digress. Let me go on to look at what I stated here. The why and the how. First off, like I just said, the main reason comic books exist and the main reason people buy them, it isn't for monetary value. It's for the value that lay within the pages of the story and the art. When we buy a magazine or a newspaper, we don't spend the money thinking we are going to resell it one day for more money. So like, again, what does a People magazine cost these days? $9.99? When somebody goes and buys the recent People magazine with Matthew McConaughey as the world's sexiest man on the cover, you're not buying that thinking that it's going to be, this is going to be worth twice as what I paid 5 years from now. No, you take it home, you read it, and most likely it's going to sit in a bathroom, you know, to be read while you're doing your business. And at some point, you're going to recycle it, right? Same with newspapers. Same with, I mean, again, any commodity that we buy, a book that we buy from Barnes and Noble. We want to read it. We want to read the story. And then we donate it to Goodwill people. Come on. But I digress, and let me continue. No, we are willing to pay a certain price to consume the stories inside. Same with comic books. Same with every other commodity that we consume in our daily lives. Now, when it comes to wanting to look at the investment side of comic books, again, telling people not to overpay is educating people. And that is what I'm doing here. If you want to make money off of comics, listen to the facts that I'm speaking on. It's that simple. Because again, what have I said in these videos? What have I talked about? Profit margin when it comes to comic books. If you guys are really looking into getting into comics to be able to make money, either as a reseller or either as somebody that wants to hold on to a comic book collection and 20, 30 years down the line, long term, have a return on your investment. What I'm telling you by showing off all these different collections is fact on how to educate yourself. If you are going to be somebody that collects comics for 30, 40 years and then wants to sell it when you're old to maybe have some money to retire on, you can't sell your comic collection in bulk. You're going to devalue the comic collection. You got to do the work. You got to sell it individually, small lots. You got to know what you have. And if you want to be a reseller, that's why the going rate for collections, even for Bronze Age stuff and Copper Age stuff, even with some stuff where there's keys, 10 cents a book, people. That's the going rate. If you got something with a lot of keys, you might push that up to $0.25 a book. You got a collection that's all Silver Age book, you might push that up to maybe 50 cents a book. But again, I use the Comic Tom and the Golden Age Guru purchase that they purchased, what, about 5 months ago or so now, as the guideline. They paid $250,000 for what was it? 300 and something thousand Golden Age books. Wonder Woman #1, pre-code horror that was extremely rare to where they literally probably could have sold 10 of the books that were in that collection and reimbursed what they paid and hit even. That is the benchmark, people, for selling in bulk. I'm educating collectors. I'm educating collectors that if you're a collector, this is how it works. If you're a reseller, this is how it works. Now take heed. I continue on here. I collect comics because I love the stories and art, and I do care about some of them increasing in value. And as long as we have this disillusionment that all comics are just valuable, and if we speak up against this fallacious bubble that we've bubbled up in our brains, then you just are all of a sudden, you're mad or you hate comics. And if you hold on to those ideals, then nothing will change. And this ignorance will be the true detriment that will ultimately kill the comic book industry more than it's already dying right now. And I've talked about that. The floppy comic book industry, especially on the primary market, is dying. And it's a fact. And I don't say that because I hate comics. I say it because I love comics. 99% of comics, especially in bulk, are worthless. I say that because I love comics. I say that because we need to change the dialogue. All these old heads or these collectors that are in it for return on investment need to stop lying to themselves. And if anybody out there has the balls to come against what I'm saying and say that I'm wrong, hit me up in the comment section. Let's do a live stream and talk about it. I guarantee you, the only reason why they wouldn't want to sit and say, Chris, you're right, is because they are protecting their own self-interest. One way or the other. I'm a businessman and I sell comics. Why would I do this? I have thousands of comics I'm trying to sell right now. Comic books that I paid $2, $3, $4, $5 for that I'm selling for $1 each. I'm putting in dollar bins. Which brings me to the same individual coming into my comment section. Now you guys can't see it. Oh, I'm sorry that it cut off, but this was a video, a little short that I did. I'm dumping so many comics from my personal collection. And it was mostly modern stuff. It was a lot of the Rebirth stuff that I paid $2.99 for. And he says, wow, look at all the short boxes. But then he says, but wait a minute. Aren't 99% of all comics worthless? And I said, yeah, if I sold them in bulk, I would only get pennies for them. But since I'm selling them individually, I'm pricing them under fair market value and throwing them in dollar bins and $2 bins. I said, keep trying though, buddy. Like, what are you trying to, you think you're catching me in some lie? No, everything I'm doing is exactly to what I'm saying. Because why? I believe in ethics and authenticity and being a good human being before I believe in being a businessman that relies on, used car salesmanship. Any of these big YouTubers out there, and I'm not going to say any names. I got respect. I'm not, and I've always been this person. I can't stand people that'll talk about somebody that has a large following on YouTube that also sells comics and say that they're this and they're that just because they're a businessman and they're making money. I respect them greatly because I'm a businessman and I'm here to make money too. Right? At the end of the day, I get it. And I'll do another video on this. You go into Whatnot sales. And yeah, boy, I laugh at a lot of these sellers and their tactics. But guess what? You know what's more like laughable? It's not even the sellers. It's the buyers that fall for it. So why should I get mad at the sellers if the tactics work? But at the end of the day, if any seller out there is going to argue against what I'm saying, they're lying to you or to themselves to protect their own self-interest. And I'm going to end this video on this because I really want to drive this home. First off, all of these collection videos, they're not even local to me. Look, I'm a single parent right now who is struggling, and I'm not even really buying comic books right now because I got bills to pay. I got children to feed. I'm not trying to buy these collections. It's fun to dive into them to say, okay, what are they asking? And let's break this down because I want to educate you guys. So let's get that out of the way. I'm not mad because he didn't accept my offer. I'm not making an offer on all this stuff. I have thousands of books that I need to sell to be able to pay my bills right now. I'm not buying any collections right now. Believe that. Now, lastly is this. The floppy market is hurting right now. Variants and ratios are keeping the primary floppy market alive. I've said this before a million times. The young readers aren't getting into comic books. They're not getting into the floppy market. They're consuming in different ways. They're consuming scholastic trade paperbacks like Dogman. They're consuming digital. They're consuming things outside of the superhero genre. Okay? They're consuming video games with the IP, and that's good because they are getting into the IP, but the floppy market is hurting. Okay? We have to educate ourselves to understand comic books is a collectibles market. It is still there, and it is thriving where it exists. Even in a downturning market, the collectibles market for comic books is thriving in areas. It's also thriving in the online live market because people are purchasing and bidding in these live sales and they're using their emotion minds and their FOMO to pay, overpriced for a book that they could have took 5 seconds for and found the same book online for, 3/4 of the price or half the price. They're paying, $8, $9, $10 for a book and a live sale on Whatnot when they could have got the same book for $4 at their LCS. That's a whole other conversation. I don't want to spend much time on that even. The bottom line is, as consumers, as collectors, as flippers, as resellers, as dealers, we all need to understand the different lanes that exist within the comic book industry and the comic book market. We need to understand what is a detriment to it and what is healthy for us, what's going to allow us to get to a long-term goal of being able to have a secondary collectibles market and a primary consumers market that isn't just based on thinking that comic books are valuable and they're going to make me rich. And once I, spend thousands of dollars on 1,000 or 5,000 comic books of modern junk, I'm going to be able to sell it. And because Hit Comics says that my value is cover price, I'm going to be able to sell it for $9,000 to some collector that just has $9,000 sitting around on. No, you're not. Period. Stop lying to yourself. Take the blinders off. Everything I'm saying is factual truth, and I'm trying to help us to have a healthy comic book market in the collector's realm, in the secondary realm, in the resellers realm, in the LCS and the dealer's realm, and in the consumer realm for those people that simply want to buy comics to read or collect for the art or whatever it is. I represent every aspect of comic book collecting from an authentic and honest standpoint, period. I'm going to end the video there, folks. I would love to hear your comments and thoughts in the comment section below. And like I said, anybody that still wants to challenge what I'm saying, hit me up, shoot me an email, captainjournocomics@gmail.com. Find me on Instagram, send me a private message. Especially if you're a dealer and you're going to tell me that what I'm saying about all these bulk collections, that you ain't out there paying pennies for them. That you ain't out there hyping people up in your whatnot sales because, hey, it works. That the profit margin for selling comic books is extremely slim, no matter if you're selling online or at a brick and mortar. Leave your thoughts below. Challenge me. Erratic Static, I got nothing but love for you, man, but I really encourage you to humble yourself and listen to what I said and look in the mirror and educate yourself and say, what is my intent here? And if my intent is it truly coming from a place where I love comics, then let me humble myself and actually listen to Chris and see why he's saying and what he's saying, and then go do your research. Anyways, appreciate all of you for being here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be well, and until next time.